Two, one. Well, hello, everybody. Ken Johnson here with you, and this is the weekend before Christmas, and we're looking across the country to see who might have a chance at seeing a white Christmas. But as I put the computer models into motion, one thing you're going to notice is there's a storm systems moving across the country, but there's just not a lot of snow because there's not a lot of cold air that's going to be in place when these storm systems are moving through. Sure, out west in the mountainous regions, the west coast of the U.S. and over the Rocky Mountains and up into Canada, there will be cold air out there, and there will be snow and white Christmases over that way. There's also some little weak disturbances up here across the Great Lakes and up there into Canada and the far northeastern parts of the country where there's going to be some maybe minor lake effect snows up that way that might produce some snow. But in general, there's just no big snowstorms, which a lot of people are okay with that. You see a couple of storm systems producing rain and storms across the southern part of the country. That would include Texas and Oklahoma and over into Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, and parts of Mississippi. But again, there's your snow out west. And if we take a look here into the mountainous regions of the western part of the country here. This would be the Rocky Mountains and then kind of extending up there into Canada. You can see some snow trying to accumulate in some of these areas, before, during, and maybe even a little after Christmas. So these places out west and the normally white areas during the Christmas season are the ones that will experience that. But if we look at temperatures across the country, one thing that you just see, at least this is as of Friday evening, a lot of cold air is out there now, Canada, the northern part of the country. This is a little bit of a southern fringe of some Arctic air that's up here into Canada, but across a good part of the southern U.S., not a lot of cold weather. And matter of fact, as we get into next week, let's talk about the weekend before Christmas and during the Christmas holiday itself. Could be pretty mild as those Pacific storms head in our direction. But if you look across the polar regions here, Alaska, the North Pole, and then back into Siberia, cold air continues to build. And when it builds in this part of the country, sooner or later, it has to come to the south. But if we look, and the reason why we don't see a lot of cold air across the United States, thus the lack of more of a threat of a white Christmas across the country, you do see a dip in the jet stream over here in the east, and that's allowing for some of that Arctic air, at least for right now, to spill over into that area. But what we're going to be watching as we head into the week of Christmas will be the Pacific Ocean. There's some big storms out here, and they'll be moving across the southern part of the country. But when you're dealing with Pacific storm systems, you're dealing with mild air. You don't deal with cold air. You're not getting the Arctic intrusions to the south. So there's your current jet stream with the dip across the central and eastern parts of the country. You get what's called a bit of a lift or a ridge in the jet stream over here across the west. If we kind of take a look at how things are going to materialize, it's going to go into next week. Again, watching this area out west, and you're going to see this become the dominant storm track, the southern storm track, which has no connection to the Arctic regions of the country here. Mild weather. Now here's a little bit of a dip right in this area around Christmas Eve. That could be one of the first systems down south that brings a little rain and storm activity. Here comes another one around or just after Christmas that might bring some more chances for storms to parts of the south. And then behind that, there's more storm systems. Believe it or not, even though we're into the winter season now officially, we're going to be looking at more like the springtime type storm systems with maybe some thunderstorms down here across the southern part of the country. Now, as we head towards early to mid-January, remember I talked about how we had that really cold air up into the Arctic regions of the world, back into Siberia, and when it builds up that way, sooner or later, it's going to come south. There's been some hints anyway, and there might be at least some data that supports perhaps maybe a bit of a change in the weather pattern, and that certainly would line up with what can happen a lot of times when we get into these types of weather patterns here. But weather information suggests early to mid-January, and again, this is way out there, get plenty of time for this to change, and it may not even happen, but it's just what we're looking at right now. You see a ridge of high pressure build up in Canada, Alaska. This forces some warmer air up this way. And when that happens, it forces that cold air from out of Siberia and the Arctic to go up north and then drop to the south on the east side of that here. And that's when we typically see our biggest intrusions of Arctic air down our way. So if this pattern were to materialize over early to mid-January, there could be a couple bouts of cold air dropping to the south, and we'll just have to wait and see if we can get any storm systems to interact with this to produce cold weather. But in the meantime, again, most of the country void of a lot of cold weather as we head into Christmas, and void of a white Christmas in most locations.